It's a country of huge oil wealth that the world helped free from tyranny. A country on the Mediterranean, full of young, educated people. But Libya's becoming a failed state, torn apart by rival militias.
I am not thinking about to get a job. I am thinking about how to be safe.
Its new parliaments fled the capital for a hotel in a distant town. A Greek car ferry is the surreal refuge for its officials. Violent jihadis now control much of Libya. I've come to Tobruk, last dusty toehold of democracy, to see if the elected authorities can fight back against militants they believe threaten the entire world.
Worst case scenario, the Islamic militants take over Libya one day. What will happen?
The coast of Libya. It's long, largely deserted, and just a few hours sailing time across the Mediterranean from Europe. The Libyan Navy patrols this eastern section, but it daren't venture far for fear of meeting militants.
جماعات طبعا خارجة على القانون وفي جماعات إسلامية متشددة وبعض الميليشيات.
He's loyal to Libya's new armed forces, formed after the revolution that ended decades of dictatorship. But the revolution didn't bring freedom, it brought chaos. This stretch of coastline is one of the few bits of Libya its newly elected parliament still controls. 3 years after the overthrow of Colonel Gaddafi, much of the country is in the hands of rebel militias, some of them linked to Al-Qaeda, and the forces at the state's disposal look puny in the extreme.
إن شاء الله لأن نحن القوة الشرعية الوحيدة اللي هو البرلمان ومعه الجيش الليبي بمختلف أصنافه البحرية والجوية والبرية.
Getting to this isolated spot's not easy. I'm one of the few foreign reporters here to see what remains of democratic Libya. Parliament's fled to Tobruk, an oil port 1,500 kilometres from the capital Tripoli. The town's so small they've had to hire a Greek car ferry to house officials and other supporters. The Aleros normally shuttles Greeks and tourists between the Greek mainland and the island of Crete. Now it's carrying a BBC reporter and some very lonely Libyans. This ferry, where all the food and accommodation is paid for by the Libyan government, has become a high-class lifeboat for hundreds of officials, activists and their families fleeing from other parts of Libya. But it's also an embarrassing symbol of the state's desperation. On the other side of the harbour, Parliament's found lodgings in a huge 1970s hotel. It's packed now with MPs arguing, gossiping, conspiring. And in the lobby, an emotional meeting. MP Salah Sobi, from the other end of Libya, has been reunited with his family. They've just escaped from rebel-held territory.
Yeah, it was once we managed to get them out of Tripoli and into the mountains for the first month, it was fine. We got worried when we had to return them back to Tripoli, just to wait for a flight to Tobruk and organise all of this, just getting them out of Tripoli.
You weren't eating, you were too frightened, you were really nervous.
Yeah, nervous, stress, very stress on my mind because of what will happen to us, especially my kids.
But they're only one of many families here who've had to be smuggled to Tobruk.
Well, we have one of our colleagues, her son was shot twice. We have one of our colleagues whose father was kidnapped. We have one of our colleagues who had 4 rockets launched into the middle of his house with his whole family in it. We have a colleague whose car was hit by a grenade. We have all sorts of stories. There's nothing that can happen that didn't happen to us.
3 years ago, the militias that have now driven them from Tripoli were revolutionary heroes. But then they refused to disband, despite mounting protests against them. This summer, when their Islamist political allies lost the elections, they seized power in Tripoli and set up their own Islamist-dominated government. So democracy and me are back where we started, in the middle of nowhere. I first stayed in this hotel 3.5 years ago, at the beginning of the Libyan revolution in 2011. I'd arrived from over the border, from Egypt. Then this place was desolate and hardly anything seemed to work. We moved straight on to Benghazi because absolutely nothing was happening in Tobruk. It's quite hard to believe now that this place is acting like the capital of the country. It's a sleepy, close-knit town of about 120,000 people. But it's where, at the start of 2011, this young engineering graduate made a rare protest against Gaddafi's regime. He stood alone here outside the Labour Exchange and demanded a job.
أنا كنت أتوقع إني يا إما أسجن بشكل يعني قوي جدا لم يراني أحد أو أقتل في فترة وجيزة يعني ممكن أسبوع.
But to his own astonishment, he wasn't jailed. He was taken to meet Gaddafi himself in his famous tent.
أول شيء يعني قذافي لم نراه جيدا لأنه كان وضع في الخلف يعني لايت ضي يعني لمبة كبيرة يعني كان حاطة يعني بحيث أنك لم ترى جيدا وكان لابس قبعة يعني لما خرجت وتحدثت أمام قذافي كان ينتابني الخوف كانت مرتبك.
But weeks later, Gaddafi's portrait came crashing down on the main square of Tobruk. Revolution engulfed the town. Abu Bakr, released by the authorities, was there, along with his best friend Faris, who was equally jobless.
Me and Abu Bakr, we came, and I didn't believe that because I never imagined that will happen with the Gaddafi regime.
But 3 years on, the opportunities they risked so much for haven't materialised. Faris, at 29, still has no job. He now feels he's part of a lost generation.
I am a petroleum engineer. I am an educated person. Logically, if I am a graduate, if I am an engineer, I have to find my job here in Libya. But the way, you know, if you would like to get a job here, you have to know someone in the government to help you.
And today, he's taking me to join other young Libyans who also have time to kill. We're going shooting. Almost every man in this country has a gun. Almost every boy. But luckily today, they're not targeting fellow Libyans. They're after birds. Their victims are delicate doves migrating south from Europe. Faris's brother Fakhri is a keen hunter. Soon, his 3-year-old son Kohi will be too. Hunters camp out here for weeks, with their own water tankers, even their own ovens. But Fakhri doesn't really want to be here. He has a job at an oil plant up the coast, but he can't go there in case he's kidnapped by jihadis on the way.
I will lose my head. Exactly.
But they would actually cut your head off?
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because I am from Tobruk.
Just because you're from Tobruk?
Yes, from Tobruk. Because all the people in Tobruk here, stand beside the consul and
the parliament.
The parliament, yes, that's it.
So, really, Libya is splitting now into two.
Divided two parts.
Yes.
Yes. One part with the army and police, and other part with that group, or Islamic groups exactly.
Are you worried? What do you think will happen?
Maybe we will fight forever. You know, we will fight that's a group forever.
There'll be a war forever.
Yes.
Colonel Gaddafi said he would hunt you down like rats, but you showed the courage of lions, and we salute your courage.
3 years ago, the British Prime Minister and the then French President were acclaimed in Benghazi, headquarters of the revolution. Everyone thought the war to free Libya was over. Today, the black flag of Jihad flies in the city that then seemed a beacon of democracy. Islamist militias have assassinated hundreds of officials, journalists and activists. Benghazi MP Amal Bayou, one of 32 women in parliament, is among those who fled.
Yeah, the assassination up to now, you know, up to today, there's 6 or 7 people daily assassinated in Benghazi.
6 or 7 people daily assassinated?
Daily, yes. Benghazi is the source of revolution, you know that. So both of them, Benghazi and the revolution, had been stolen.
But there's also a jihadi-run town, even closer to Tobruk.
The people of Derna.
When I visited Derna during the revolution, it was already notorious for the number of anti-American fighters it had sent to Iraq. Now one jihadi group there says Derna has joined the so-called caliphate, declared by the Islamic State militant group in Iraq and Syria. And militants from Syria are now reported to have arrived here in Libya. So how has all that been allowed to happen?
Everybody was saying the values of the revolution. Nobody ever sat down and discussed what these values were. And I think that is where we lost the trick, if you like. Some countries backed the Muslim Brotherhood because they thought these guys were, okay, they're Islamists, but they're moderate Islamists. And who were showing clear distance from the jihadis. And that is where the mistake happened.
He calls the Tripoli authorities terrorists, a claim they angrily reject. They say they're the ones keeping the spirit of the revolution alive. But they've told us they're fighting alongside a group on the US terror list, Ansar al-Sharia. It took part in the attack on the US consulate in Benghazi 2 years ago, in which the ambassador was killed. Talk of an alliance with Ansar al-Sharia is a startling admission by the head of the self-proclaimed government based in Tripoli.
حاولوا خلق أن العدد من الموجودة الآن تدافع عن بنغازي كلها من أنصار الشريعة أو كلهم من المتطرفين. هذه حقيقة غير صحيحة. يعلم الخبراء العسكريين والمدققين السياسيين أن هناك جسمين الآن موجودين مع بعض. البعض من أنصار الشريعة والبعض منهم من الثوار الذين كانوا في 2011. يقاتلون مع بعضهم البعض الآن.
And now there's a propaganda war too, in which even the ferry is a battlefield. Tripoli says it's a den of luxury and vice. I can't find any of that. The shop's closed, and there's definitely no alcohol on board. And the guests are confined here with nowhere else to go. So when the Prime Minister suddenly appears in Parliament, everyone wants answers from him. Will he launch a military counter-attack on Tripoli?
لا يحدث قتال في داخل طرابلس
ونتمنى أن يكونوا هم مدركين لخطورة ما يقومون به وأن ينسحبوا ويتركوا المدينة لتعيش في أمان وأمن، وفي حالة عدم امتثالهم الدولة ستفرض أمرها بالقوة بكل تأكيد. هذا آخر أسلوب يعني.
Really? His authority barely extends beyond this room. Parliament seems caught between terror and denial, refusing to admit that it no longer has a country to run. It's taken the deputies here weeks to agree on the formation of a new government, arguing about exactly how many ministries there should be. And in the meantime, the rival government in Tripoli has been up and running, occupying ministry buildings and taking more territory. Here, they've just been talking. But they don't like us to film them talking. For Democrats, they're not very open.
You're just filming me?
I'm so sorry. Please stop it. Please now. Okay. Now.
We've even been threatened with a gun by one parliamentary guard. Salah Sobi, gentle and Anglophile, who used to help run the British Cultural Centre in Tripoli, is a bit embarrassed. But how will his parliament win back the country?
We are asking them to leave Tripoli, hand over all of their weapons to the Libyan army. They have zero control, they're sitting about doing nothing in Tripoli, and actually they're just embarrassing themselves.
Those are the forces. They control the three biggest cities in the country, Tripoli, Benghazi, Misrata. They're the people in control, not you.
Territory means nothing right now. I can take an army now and control half of Libya. It doesn't mean anything.
What counts, he says, is legitimacy. The UN recognises their parliament. Amal Bayou and other MPs have gone to beg the world to help them. Diplomats say Tobruk's forces already get support from anti-Muslim Brotherhood states, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt. It's become a proxy war between competing power blocs in the Middle East, and in recent days in Benghazi, it's been intensifying. The Islamist forces are said to be supplied by Qatar and Sudan, though they deny it. But the West's not keen to get involved again militarily. The UN's been trying to broker peace talks in Tripoli, and some think they could work. It's a fight not just between ideologies, but between rival cities who could share power. But with no peace yet, there's not much to do in Tobruk, except play on the beach. Particularly when, like Faris and his brother Mohammed, you've got no job. But of course, jet skiing's only for the boys, like most fun in Libya. And it's an expensive pleasure. Mohammed's borrowing a friend's machine.
How was it? So fun. Yeah, it's good? It's good. Excellent.
But Faris has had enough of Libya. After the revolution, he worked in Holland. He came back to try to help rebuild his country. Now, he regrets that.
I found out it was a wrong decision to go back to Libya because I didn't find myself here in my country. There is no jobs, there is no security, so I didn't find myself.
Meanwhile, on the ferry, it's the morning after another long night of empty talk. Only one commander is stirring, off, he says, to military headquarters.
The whole world is supporting us because we are the last line of defense. As you know, if they win here, so Europe in danger, your people in danger already. So we are the last line of defense. So everybody is supporting us.
Last line of defense against what?
You know, against the terrorism, terrorists also.
Against terrorism?
Yeah, terrorism, I mean. So really, if they win here, so Europe and the whole world in danger.
But more urgently, it's his fellow guests on the ship who need protecting. Libya's only paid the bill for the ferry, about $2 million, up to today. We're all being ordered off, though some don't want to go. I think that if all these families are forced, told that they must leave the ship, there'll simply be a mutiny, because there's nowhere else that they can go. There's no other accommodation here in Tobruk. There are hardly any flights out, and the roads are too dangerous to travel on because of hostile militia. They can't go back to the towns they fled from because most of them have been threatened there. So I really don't know what will happen. No one knows what will happen next in Libya, but Faris is leaving. His revolutionary dreams have long been washed away.
I am not thinking about to get a job. I am thinking about how to be safe. To be honest, I am talking with you, I am afraid of myself. Because I was talking about jihadism, and if they watch it, maybe they're gonna catch me, you know. Everyone has a gun here in Libya. So maybe it's going to be more worse, you know. Really, it's difficult. To be honest, if I get a chance to travel abroad again, I believe I will not come back to Libya. I believe, really, I believe I will not come back.
Gradually, the ship's emptying. They've heard that guards have brought guns on board, and they don't want to risk a showdown. But most don't know where they'll sleep tonight. And I don't know how Tobruk, this tiny embattled outpost, will impose its authority on the rest of a vast country, though the consequences of failure, they insist here, would be terrifying.
Let's look at the worst case scenario, that yes, the Islamic militants take over Libya one day. What will happen? We're talking about 2 hours away. Italy's to Crete can be seen from here on a nice evening, on a clear evening. If somebody has the means to deliver rockets or whatever, the means to deliver destruction to Europe, they can do it from this side if they have control.
It's the same danger of extremism, they believe, as in Syria and Iraq, though here in the long term, perhaps even worse. But the great powers are too busy there to have time to return to Libya now. Whatever the threat, Libyans are on their own, not together, but far, far apart.